Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this webinar in conversation with Access Group Interviewing for Success, hosted by Access Group. We're thrilled to have you join us today. My name is Bumi, and I'll be your moderator for this session. We're super excited to get started and hope you enjoyed the webinar. Over to you, Claire.
Thank you so much, Bunmi. So hello, everyone, and thank you for joining our webinar with Access today. My name is Claire Jameson. I'm the Global Diversity, Equity and Inclusion Partner for Access Group, and I'll be going to be your host. I've been a HR professional for over 20 years now, with more than a decade focused on D&I in particular, and I'm joined on this webinar today by my colleagues Ewan Marshall, Ellen McFarlane and Tiara Samuel. Ewan is an experienced recruitment professional, more than 15 years in recruitment, and he currently serves as a talent acquisition advisor at Access, where he focuses particularly on finding talent in HR and marketing. And Ewan is going to be the person that runs the first half of our session today, all around interview masterclass. And then Earl and Tiara are going to join me for the second half, and Earl is the head of support for Access Group's suite of HR and workforce management applications, leads a team of 51 engineers, 6 team leaders, and support customer across UK and Europe. And he's also the chair of the Access Group's Grace Committee. Tiara is a solicitor, qualified in England and Wales, supports colleagues across the UK, Europe, US and APAC with commercial contract negotiations, as well as contentious and non-contentious intellectual property dispute resolution. And since joining Access back in 2020, she progressed from a paralegal to trainee solicitor, now serves as an in-house legal counsel and is co-chair with as the Grace Network Steering Committee. So by way of introduction as well to the Access Group, just so that you know a bit more about us, we're one of the leading providers of business management software. We provide solutions that empower more than 100,000 small and mid-sized organisations in commercial and not-profit sectors across Europe, USA and Asia Pacific. And our innovative cloud solutions and integrated AI software experience across multiple Access products transform how business technology is used. So that's a bit about us. For the moment, then we're going to say goodbye to Earl and Tiara, who can stay on camera if you want to. It's entirely up to you. But they'll be back for the second half. And the first half of the session that we're going to do today is all around the interviewing masterclass. So welcome, Ewan. And do you want to, before we sort of get into the whole piece around the masterclass, do you want to just tell us a little bit about you and your career at Access?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. So, as mentioned, my name's Ewan Marshall. I've been in recruitment for coming up to 15 years now. Throughout my career, I've worked across various different sectors. So, I've worked in the public sector, where I actually started my recruitment journey, where I was recruiting for police officers, specials, volunteers within Leicestershire Police. I then transitioned over to luxury retail, where I've spent a big bulk of my career as a recruiter. I was responsible for recruiting all new stores opening and doing quite a lot of big recruitment there and bulk recruitment and bulk hiring there. I then moved on from luxury retail and actually did a small stint within the plumbing industry as a recruiter before moving on to the Access Group of where I am now, which is obviously a rapidly growing SaaS organisation. So I've been with Access Group now for coming up to 3 years in May, and as mentioned, I am responsible for recruitment here of all HR and marketing professionals, not only in the UK but also within our European function as well, where I support.
Brilliant, thank you so much. So let's get into the masterclass.
Perfect, great stuff. So if we could just move across a couple of slides, that'll be great. And again, and then there we go. Yes, perfect. Great stuff. So obviously I've been asked to attend tonight to talk about recruitment and the process and provide some hints and tips. So I thought a great place to start would be actually to start understanding the recruitment process and what that looks like. Having worked across obviously various sectors and different companies, this can vary, but so I've tried to succinct it into 5 easy steps that really happens within the recruitment process. So as we all know, it's probably going to be starting off with that application form. So these can take on actually physical application forms, but also virtual application forms. So they can very much vary, and it's where you normally start to bring your CV into that as well. So some people have actually an application form where you need to put in certain criteria, but some, like us at the Access Group, we just really require some very top level information, name, email address, and then we'll also ask for your CV as well at that point. Some companies will ask for a cover letter as well, so just keep an eye out on that side of things, but the majority of companies are just looking for a CV. One really good tip to remember here is when you're actually applying for that role is actually to try and bring in some key things into your CV for the specific role that you're applying for. So what I would suggest is look through the description or the advert that you're applying to and try and pick out the key points which they're looking for in that side of things. For example, if it's a marketing manager position, marketing managers obviously with us, we're looking for demand gen marketing manager, multi-channel demand gen campaigns. So I would ensure that you're trying to bring those key wordings like multi-channel demand gen generation into your CV. So really look at the job description which is being advertised and try and bring those key points from that description into your CV. That way, it's going to help us as recruiters when we're going through your CV is to actually draw your expertise and align it to the job description which you're applying for. So
Yeah. If I just to come in there, would you suggest that maybe people have like almost a CV that has everything in it, that's their standard one that they keep on, so they've got everything and they're adding to that and making sure they've got all their skills and experiences, and then they sort of tailor that each time for the nuances of the specific job, and then they send that version off to the
yeah,
recruiter? Yeah.
very good question. So yeah, I would recommend that you almost have like a master copy
Yeah.
of your CV, and then for the jobs that, because obviously we know that some people will apply for multiple roles, but there may be key roles which you are 100% wanting. That's your dream job. That's where you're going to be wanting to get. That's what you want to do. That's your dream career. That's your dream company. That's when I would highly recommend is tailoring your CV and bringing in those key elements from that job description. So yeah, have that master copy of your CV, and then also then tailor it for the jobs that you really want, that you love. That's what I would highly recommend for that on that side of things. Perfect. So normally after a after the application, this will move on to a screening call side of things. So screening call is exactly what it says. It can actually be virtual. It can be done via phone, but also can be done via the likes of Zoom or Teams, for example. And the screening call really is that initial high level, normally an informal chat. Really, it gives us as recruiters a great opportunity to get to know you in a lot more detail. We get to know your careers, but it starts covering off a lot of the top level side of things. So we here at Access Group, we all do screening calls, and the reason we're doing that is yes, we're trying to see your alignment to the role, but we also don't want to be wasting your time. So what you can expect from that screening call is actually we'll be talking about your salary expectations, we'll be talking about the working setup, we'll be talking about the notice period as well. So those are some key high level information, but we don't want to be wasting your time. So if, for example, your salary expectation is way above, we're not going to be putting you through that process, and we don't want to be wasting your time. Or it could be a working setup. And likewise, if it's not going to work for you, we don't want to be wasting your time. Those screening calls really will be with a member of recruitment. It could be a HR professional within the organization, or it's normally the hiring manager that could be doing those initial screening calls as well. What I will say is applicants, that's a key point for you to start asking your questions about the company, about the role. Like I said, at that stage of screening call, it's really an initial informal conversation for you to get to know us, but us to get to know you as well. What I will say, yes, it's informal, and yes, it's an initial chat, but still act really professional on those calls, because we are still taking into account that side of things, and we are trying to align you to the job. And unfortunately, screening calls you can get rejected at as well, because it may may be that you don't align specifically for what we are looking for at that time. So yes, it's informal, yes, it's an initial chat, but still act really professional on those calls, which is a key part of that.
Yeah. And for you as the applicant, that's a really good opportunity for you to see, well, what am I hearing, and what am I finding out about the organisation, and are you right for me? Not just am I right for you, are you right for me? Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's a key point, is actually throughout this whole process, throughout the whole recruitment process, it's a two-way street. Recruitment at the end of the day is, yes, we are trying to fill a position as recruiters and hiring managers. We want to fill that position. We want to get the correct person in there. But as applicants, you are also interviewing that company. Like, you are wanting to see an alignment for that. Are you in line with the company's values? Are you in line with the culture? Do you like what you're hearing when you're having these interviews, etc.? And if you are not aligned to those points, if you don't feel a connection to that company, then it's absolutely fine for you to walk away. Like I said, you are interviewing that company as much as we are interviewing you. So it's a very good point there.
And at that screening call, is that when you would talk to me about what the process, how many interviews I might go through and things like that, or does that come later?
Yeah, I would suggest, if a recruiter's not telling you on that screening call of what the process is start asking that question, because it could be that you have other interviews ongoing, but so you want to know how many steps this is going to be, so you can make that decision as well. But normally, yes, as a recruiter, I'm very much like, this is what the next stage of the process will be. This is what's going to happen, and when you can expect to come back to, you can expect to hear an answer from me. But we normally go through what the stages are at that point.
And you mentioned like salary expectations there. So you'd be perhaps asking me what the expectation I might have for the role to sort of gauge it. Is it okay if I ask, because quite often it's not on the job spec, what's the kind of view on at what point should I be saying, what is this salary pitched at? Where would I ask that?
Yep, like I said, that's a two-way street. It's an initial informal chat. So 100%, if you are not asked what that what your salary expectation is, feel free to be asking that question about actually what is the salary for this role. We would normally have a banding. There are certain times when, unfortunately, we may not know 100% what that salary will be, and there could be various reasons to that, because it could be actually that we're recruiting for a role, and actually the hiring manager has asked, we're not 100% sure where we're going to pitch that role, and we're sort of going out to the market to try and do a bit of benchmarking research. We know we want that role, we know that that's going to be there, but we need to see what the market is paying, etc. So yeah, ask that salary question at that screening call, but also we will hopefully be telling you that that salary banding is absolutely fine to talk about salary at any of these stages.
Thank you. Yeah.
Great stuff. So obviously, if you've passed the screening call, that's great. You're going to be moving on to the interview process. So with regards to interviews, normally with us at the Access Group, this is normally a 1 or a 2-stage process. However, companies do vary. They really, really do. Depending on the role, depending on what it needs, this could be a lengthy process. So 1, 2, 3. I've heard 4 stages interview. Ideally, you want to sort of be doing a sort of 2-stage interview. That I think for quite a lot of jobs, 2 stages is absolutely fine. But obviously, it can change from company to company, for role to role. And the types of interviews that you can probably expect, obviously, we have the one-to-one interview, the classic one-to-one, which can be done virtually and also done in person. That's exactly what it says on the tin. It's a one-to-one interview with the candidate and the hiring manager side of things. My least favorite out of all of the interviews is a group interview. I unfortunately have been in a situation where I have had a group interview previously. They're not the nicest of environments. I don't want to sort of pull the wool over anyone's eyes, but these still do take effect as group interviews. And group interviews, what I'm meaning by that is where you're actually in a room with the other candidates that are going for that room, and the hiring manager will directly ask you questions in front of the group. That's why I'm saying it's the least favorite of process. I've been in it. It's not a nice process, but unfortunately, it is still a practice that can be done as well. Panel interviews, it's exactly what it says as well. It's a panel interview. These can be anywhere from 2 individuals to sort of 3-4 individuals. Again, the great thing about a panel interview is actually, if you think about it, you're probably going to be shortening down that recruitment process, because the people that are the hiring managers, the sort of decision makers, they're all there together. So it's not going to be like, okay, you've done 2 stages. Oh, now we need you to meet with this person. Now we need to meet that person. The more people are on that, obviously, yes, it's going to be the decision makers that are on there. A good tip for this is to actually direct your answer to the person who is answering, who is asking you the question. Yes, don't ignore the other people. So just briefly look across the panel, but I would always recommend directing your answer to that question to the person who has asked you it. It can be a bit daunting, and it can be a bit sort of confusing of where to look in those situations, but always direct your your answer to the question of who's asked that. Task and presentation. Actually, I'm going to do assessment center first, because I want to touch on task and presentation separately. So assessment center, we do these here at the Access Group, and quite a lot of companies do this. I've done this Leicestershire Police as well, where I was doing recruitment, and assessment centers can very much vary. Normally it has group and individual tasks in there. You could normally have a one-to-one interview in there. There could be situational judgment tests in there as well. So it can vary. So what I would ask is, if you what I'd suggest is, if you were going to an assessment center, is speak to the hiring manager or the recruiter to actually what to expect from that assessment center. They can be very long days. So our assessments here are actually full day assessment centers, but the beauty about that is that actually we make decisions by the end of that day. So it's a one process assessment center, because everyone's there, and it's not going to be another drawn out sort of process. But go with assessment centers. I absolutely love holding assessment centers. You get to see a lot of sort of different personalities of what people do, and I would always be yourself at them assessment centers. Yes, we're recruiting for a job, but we're looking for you. We're looking for your personality, and it's a really key time to shine that at the assessment center. Task and presentation. So task and presentation, normally, if we go back to what the stages are, so 1 and 2 or 3. So what normally happens is you'll have a screening call with a recruiter, and this is how it works here. So you have a screening call with me as a recruiter, then you would have an initial interview with the hiring manager. If you pass that stage, that's when you would normally be set a task or a presentation to do. That task, you should be provided all the information of what is needed, what you're expected, the time, what we're looking for on that side of things. And then we would bring you back to a second stage interview, and that's where you would actually present that task back. So that's how it normally falls in line. But you should be provided all information of what that task entails. If you don't know, if you're worried about anything from that task, it was like, oh, I just need that describing. Can you reword? Reach out to your recruiter. They should be able to go into more detail or reword things for you and advise on that side of things.
So when we're looking at the that stage, I'm just thinking about, I mean, I know what you're saying about assessment centres, because in years gone by, I used to run graduate assessment centres actually, and I really loved those, because you see so much about a different person in the different types of activities that you do. And you sort of touched on there about that they're there to, I guess, to check all of the skills and the competencies and the experience that somebody has. Is that an all right, again, question for someone to say, what is it that you're looking to what do you say, score me on? I don't know if that's the right word, but what is it that you're looking to find out about me? That's fine, right, for the candidate to say, what is it that we're being assessed against?
Yeah, absolutely fine. So normally throughout all these, so one-to-one, group interview, panel, assessment center, there are going to be key core competencies that you are going to be sort of marked against. So it is normally a marked process. So yeah, definitely ask that that question, like what you're going to be marked against. But also, what I would always say is all of these processes, it's not just about what you can bring. It's not just about sort of how well you can do a role. A lot more companies now it's about you as an individual, making sure that you're bringing your whole self, bringing your sort of personality to that as well. That's what we're looking for within these processes as well.
And again, good opportunity to check that the values align, the values that are
Yeah,
coming through from the organisation align with me as a candidate.
yeah,
And
yeah,
that's going to
definitely.
be nervous, right? Everybody's going to be nervous and affected by nerves. Have you got any advice or tips on that, handling those nerves at those
Yeah.
interviews in the centre?
Yeah, so nerves are it's a given at the end of the day. You are going to be nervous through this process as recruiter. So I'm a recruiter, I'm not a hiring manager. So a hiring manager is the manager for that role. A recruiter is probably for the company that recruits separately, normally sits within HR. So with those nerves, there's normally a starting question with regards to an icebreaker. That is to really get you talking. That's to really get you going, talking about you as an individual, what your hobbies, interests, all of that side of things. It's really to open you up, to relax you a little bit as well. But some key things, so little takeaways that you can do for nerves is hold something, have like a pen in your hand, or it could be that you have your hands close together. Like just something to do with your hands. That's absolutely fine to do if you're nervous. Is have that as well. Key thing to try and alleviate as many of these nerves as possible is do your research about the company, about the role, even look up people on LinkedIn if you wanted to like to find out a little bit about them. But the more research that you can do, the more preparation that you can do for that interview about the company, the less nervous you will probably be. But a key one is like have something to hold in your hands, and also a glass of water. That is a key one. I always say that through interviews, because obviously you're going to get dry mouth. When you get nervous, you normally get a dry mouth. So have a glass of water there as well.
Yeah, good tip. And you and I will know the phenomenon of the STAR model, but many people might not that's on the webinar today. Can you just talk us a bit about what does that mean and why is it a good thing
Yep.
for both the interviewer and the interviewee?
Yeah, so the STAR methodology is a really great tool to actually use. So it stands for situation, task, action, result. And what that allows you to do as a candidate is really to follow a story. It allows you to try and be a bit more succinct with your answering. It allows you to draw out, like, really take the interviewer on that story. So it's a really great method to use when using your examples. So yeah, I would always recommend using the STAR methodology when answering questions. It's a really great starting point. And what it will also help you to do, because I get quite a lot of feedback from hiring managers that say, they went off on a tangent. They really went off on this. They kept jumping around and giving different sort of answers. That STAR methodology will hopefully alleviate you going off on tangents or giving very like loads and loads of different examples, because you are going to be taking them on a story using that STAR methodology side of things.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah. And is there any big no-nos in your mind when I'm being assessed through these? Is there any things that you've seen in your years that you would think, oh, that's not a good idea?
Yeah. So big no-nos, chewing gum. I've had chewing gum being chewed throughout interviews in my time, so much so they were actually pulling it out of their mouth and twiddling it around their fingers. So chewing gum, big no-no. Please do not go into your interviews with chewing gum. Also, what I would also recommend, it's not a big no-no, but dress for the company that you are applying for. So, for example, I used to do recruitment for a luxury retailer. All the stores, they were in suits. They were very smartly dressed for the environment that we were selling in. And what we would love to see and what we would advise is actually please dress accordingly, for if you're going in stores. So we would be expecting candidates to be coming onto virtual or in-person interviews in sort of a suit or shirt and tie, for example. I've had people unfortunately turn up for virtual interviews who have just rolled out of bed, that maybe not having a top on, and that's another big no. So make sure you're correctly dressed for these interviews, but at chewing gum, and make sure you're professionally dressed for whatever environment you're being interviewed for.
Okay, so I've done all that then. We're now
Yep.
at offer or rejection stage.
So yeah, it's sort of one or the other, isn't it, at this stage? And the offer stage, congratulations, you've got the job side of things. Again, this is normally handled by the recruiter or the hiring manager. And what will happen is that we will provide you, we will say, this is what we want to offer you. So yeah, it's what it says basically. We're going to offer you that role. It is fine at this stage, and actually, I've put it here that it's fine for you to ask about benefits along this. I would say it's fine for you to ask about benefits right from the screening call side of things. It's fine for you to do, but we will deliver the offer to you. That will be your job title, that will be the salary, that will be the working environment, that will be your start date. We will talk you through all of that side of things. So hopefully, if a recruiter has done their job correctly, there's not going to be any sort of shocks at that point, because obviously hopefully we've not put you through a process to find out that actually it's not aligned with what you were looking for. So hopefully it's going to be a nice, pleasant surprise for you that you've been successful in that role. The other the other end of this side of this is obviously rejection. Again, normally this is actually handled by a recruiter. Depending on the size of the company, either the recruiter or the hiring manager, but I'll say more of the recruitment teams say this. This is where we'll provide you with clear feedback of why you've not been successful. It should be constructive feedback for you as well. So constructive, actionable feedback that you can put into place. So it could be the 12 months down the line, if the role came back available, you may be able to re-interview for that role and be like, actually, I've put this into effect, which will state you in more good stead for that role. But you should be getting clear, concise, constructive feedback from the company that you've spoke about. It may be verbally, it may be written, but as long as you are getting something, I would say that that's great. I hear so many stories nowadays where actually candidates are not being informed they've done all this work and they've not been informed of how they've been. So you should be expecting feedback from that. Yes, it can vary from the time that come back, but if you haven't received feedback, definitely touch base with the company to find out what's happening, because you want an outcome, etc. What I would say,
Oh, sorry, go on.
no, ask your question. It's fine.
The question was just going to be, it's all right to push on that, isn't it? Because a scenario, I guess, comes up and can come up quite often for people is, we really liked you, we thought you were great. Actually, there was a lot of candidates, and it was, it wasn't anything that you did, or it was just that somebody else was slightly more qualified or something like that. It's good to push really a little bit, isn't it? And to say, well, can you just give me something that would say, well, what could I do differently? What was it extra that person brought to the table that I could maybe think about? And rather than just take that as they.
Yeah, I would definitely be looking for some constructive feedback from that. What I'd like to do as a recruiter is I try and give positives and negatives. So what did you do well? Because actually you've done all this work. You should be seeing actually what your positives, what your strengths are, what that is. But there could be some blind spots where actually you feel like you may have the experience, but actually it's not at the level that we're looking for, or actually blind spots where you haven't got the experience. So we need to be giving you that constructive feedback so you can work on that area to get that sort of experience behind you. But yeah, I would definitely be pushing for more of the constructive feedback from that side of things.
And would that go for the same if you were offered as well? So would you ask at that point, or sort of wait until you got into the role to say, well, what was it that you saw at me at interview that I should be sort of really bringing out now that I'm here? And is there any things that you would say, well, there were these things that we thought, we still wanted to offer you the role, but we would suggest you work on that. Should I push for that too?
I wouldn't say as much push for that. I think it's a good point to ask for that feedback of how you actually performed in an interview, because yes, but you'll get caught up in that excitement. But yeah, it's definitely fine for you to sort of ask, like, actually, so what did I do well? What is there any areas that I think I need to work on? But the beauty about that is that your hiring manager will obviously have seen your strengths where there may be training elements, and that will form into that will fall into something that will come on later, that ESPs or sort of training side of things, that we will train that from a company point of view, and we'll cover what that looks like as well.
Lovely.
One
Okay.
key thing that I would stress on this side of things is, even on a rejection, even if it's not the outcome that you are wanting at all, but remember to take that news really professionally. At the end of the day, you never know, there could be another job 3 months down the line that actually we think, oh, actually, such and such person would be great for that role. Let's touch base with them. Let's see if that's of interest to you. If you are rude, if you are really negative of taking that rejection, unfortunately, we may not reach out to you for that role. Unfortunately, and I've had people take rejections from one extreme to another. People who are really understanding, they understand where we're coming from, all the way to the opposite end, where I've been sworn at previously on a rejection. Yeah, it's not the nicest, and unfortunately, I wouldn't have approached that woman again for a role with us, because she took that negatively. So remember to be professional when taking that on, and your rejections, the person who's giving you that rejection should be professional in giving you that side of things as well.
Thanks, yeah.
No worries. So if we could just move on to the next slide. Perfect. Great stuff. So as you may have heard, I said preparation is key throughout all of this process. So it helps you to alleviate nerves, but it also shows your understanding, it shows your willingness, it shows your want to be joining the company that you're interviewing for. So some key preparation: research the company, look at the company values, look into the company culture, the mission, recent news articles. All of that is possible. For example, on the Access you can go Access Careers, and it will start bringing up our culture, bringing in our values, etc. So yeah, that's some key information to do, is research the company. Analyze the job description, so identify those key skills, ensure you highlight your experience alignment. So like we were saying right at the beginning, so from that CV point of view, ensuring you're highlighting your experience for the role, from taking the job description, some key areas, into your CV for that. And then, like I said, remember the STAR methodology. So situation, task, action, result. It will allow you to tell a story and really like take us as recruiters or a hiring manager on a journey for that side of things. Some really key hints and tips here. So punctuality is important. So this could be in person, it could be virtually. Make sure you are turning up on time for that interview. Punctuality is really important. If you are running late, these things happen, but make sure you are communicating with the company that unfortunately you're running late for X, Y, and Z. Just drop an email, drop a text message, drop a phone call, ideally to explain the situation. But punctuality is key. But there, we do realize that there are times in life where things do, like, it can not go to plan. So yeah, just always make sure that you're keeping us updated. Dress for the role. So this is a key thing, like I've said to you, in person and virtually. So make sure you are dressing for the company that you are applying for. So it could be a sports role, it could be like, I don't know, PE teacher. Like, are they going to be wanting you to come in full suit or anything? You can ask the questions, what's the dress code within your company, and find out what you should be working. That's absolutely fine to do, but always make sure you're dressed professionally for that. Like I said, I've had some people turn up for virtual interviews with no top on, and it wasn't very a good interview for that person. Listen to what is being asked of you. So this is a key thing. So it's one of those things, is yes, you are listening, but are you really actually listening to the question which is being posed to you? So this is a key area. So, and if you don't understand the question, it's fine for you to ask for it to be reworded in a minute, in a different way. So make sure you're listening to being what's asked, and answer that question of what is being asked to you. If virtually, ensure connectivity and the location is appropriate. So making sure your connectivity to the internet is absolutely fine and the location is appropriate. So no loud noises in the background, there's no distractions, there's no one going to be walking around you, because that's going to distract you from the interview. You really want to be engaged throughout that interview process. So making sure that the location is appropriate. Ensure you tech accordingly. So making sure that if it's virtually on Teams or on Zoom, make sure you have that app downloaded onto your phone, onto your laptop prior to that interview, because obviously if you don't, that could delay the process for you. And again, punctuality is key. So make sure you've got those in place. Like I said, have something to hold if nervous. That's a key one. So if you're ever nervous, have something to hold, and that would just help alleviate those nerves a little bit. And remember, nerves are completely natural, and it's our job as a company, as a recruiter, as a hiring manager, to try and put you at ease as much as you can throughout that whole process. And also take your time in answering questions. So silence isn't a bad thing. I quite like silence in an interview. It's where, and what I'm saying is silence, it's not sitting there completely silent throughout the whole interview. It's when you are asked that question, taking a few seconds to actually formulate that answering your question. Don't be scared of that silence side of things, because it will actually show that you're formulating that question and then come in with your question for that. Try and keep the speed of your answers completely steady throughout, because yes, nerves is going to be a big thing for you, but the speed of how you're giving those answers is really key, because you don't want to be rattling through it really quickly, and look engaged throughout the whole process. So looking engaged, like make sure you're engaging with who's interviewing you. And the last good tip is, remember, and this is a key one, you are interviewing us as a company as much as we are interviewing you. So really key tips there.
Oh, that's brilliant. Yeah, thank you so much. I think that's been really helpful to go through kind of all of that process and all of those hints and tips there. So I know that there's been some questions coming in. I can't see them yet, so we'll come back to those in a minute. But what
Absolutely.
we did want to do, as well as the masterclass, was also sort of just talk with Tiara and Earl about your kind of careers and things like that at Access. And I know we'll probably haven't got a huge amount of time to touch on that, but I do kind of want to bring you back in. I can see you on the screen again then now. And Earl, if I come to you first, just and we sort of gave you a bit of an intro at the beginning about your kind of career at Access and how long you've been here. But if I could just sort of touch on, I think we talked before that you've been here for over 3 years, 3.5 years now. What was it about Access and that sort of process that you went through that connected in with your values? And could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Yeah. So the Access mantra of kind of love life, love you, love life, be you, and kind of love work is something that I really try and gravitate to. I think the moment that you're quite passionate about the work that you do, it kind of resonates, it shows in your work. And the work that we do with the Grace Network is I'm very passionate about shaping a culture that facilitates that. It shows how important how a diverse culture can be. And we're a big culture. So love work, love life, and be you is really important, because once you can actually do that, once you can actually be you, you can actually produce the best work that you can do for yourself and for Access as well. So that's the reason why it aligned for me quite well, to be fair.
Yeah, I would say similar actually for myself, that kind of connection of love work, love life, be you. Definitely, it was something that I felt. Tiara, we sort of mentioned again in your intro that you've gone through quite a lot already in your career at Access. Could you share a little bit around kind of those moves and your career development while you've been here? Because I think that'd be really helpful for people to see that progression.
Yeah, definitely. I think my goal was always to become a solicitor, and when I joined Access as a paralegal, I made that quite clear, I suppose, in that introductory meeting that you were mentioned as part of the recruitment process. That's what I said to my hiring manager. That was my goal. And sort of made it quite known quite early on that that was the sort of career progression I was looking for, albeit I had no previous experience in the software SaaS industry. This was my first legal role, so I came in at a very junior level, but I was keen to learn on all the different areas, and I got the chance to work with the different areas of the business with support, with product teams, with marketing, sales, finance, and that helped me to gain some of the basic knowledge that I needed to get by day to day to be able to advise on the law, and sort of build my professional network. And from that point, I was able to then prove that, okay, I can do the normal bounds of my paralegal role. What else can I do now to progress? And then have that conversation with my manager quite upfront. That's always been something I wanted to do. And I think at Access, there is that opportunity to grow and grow into different roles. The paralegal role didn't exist before I joined Access. It was a new role at the time. There was never been a trainee solicitor program at Access until I asked the question, can we make it happen? And you know, with some hard work, some right yeses from the business, we made it happen. And now there's actually a junior lawyer training program in place, and we've got 3 paralegals who started at the business a few months ago, sorry.
Yeah, and the satisfaction that you must get from knowing that that's things that you've driven, you know, and had the opportunity to drive. That when might sound a little bit cliche, but we do have that kind of mantra of we're a learn it all, not a know it all organization, and being able to make those suggestions is completely valued, right? That it's like, well, you've spotted something, this would be great, can I make it happen? And have done it, and you've done that really as well, the pair of you, with the Grace Network as well. You know, it was a passion that you both had, and I know we've talked about it before and sort of how do we get it off the ground, but tell us a bit about why it was so important for you, and what you've kind of done to grow the Grace Network.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Grace, and I suppose for those of you on the call that don't know Grace means Global Race Acceptance Community Ensemble, and that's an employee community network that Earl and I have started to be able to create that community within the business so that people feel like they've got a home and a culture that they can really support and be themselves in. For me, I built up the professional network quite quickly just through the natural day-to-day role. But what was really important to me was to be able to have the conversations and get mentorship from different people in the business. And that's sort of how Grace started. It started from me and Earl coming across each other in our business as usual, to then having more and more conversations about how can we actually bring more people in to share experience, make people feel at home. And that's sort of, I guess, how Grace was founded. And sort of the goal of Grace is to promote multiculturalism at Access, and it's a community group that's open to all of the colleagues. It's whether you're identifying as an underrepresented racial or ethnic background, or you want to be an ally, and it's open to all members, right, to support racial equality and diversity in the business.
Yeah, thank you. Earl, you talk us a bit about Grace, because it's a huge passion for you.
It is indeed, yeah. I mean, much like Tiara said, it was like-minded people coming together. For me, it started with a little bit of discontentment about, you know, what we didn't actually have. And I think that's one of the best parts about the culture of Access, is because it, much like Tiara has just explained to you, Tiara has paved her way forward. She has decided what she would like to do, and Access has facilitated that. And it's exactly the same with the Grace Network, is that, you know, we identified something that was missing, definitely something that was missing for my culture and for Tiara's culture, and they empowered us to create a movement, to create something. And that's one of the best things about, I guess, about working for Access, is it allows you that maturity to actually go and, you know, find it and then move it forward. And then ever since then, it's been, you know, it's just been a journey that has just been progression. You know, we've found other like-minded people, we've come together, we've had diverse thoughts, and then as we've been adding those, that kind of diverse perspectives, it's just grown pretty much exponentially. So the world is our oyster now, really, and the more that we gain momentum and movement, the bigger it gets. So
yeah. And even like, I mean, this is kind of not, it won't be a secret for too much long, but we had such an amazing event today. We had the sort of the first in-person event for Grace today, with a large audience and a guest speaker that we'll post some things out on our socials soon. But I think that just shows the kind of journey that it's been on. Again, you probably use a bit of a cliche word there, but how much hard work and effort that you guys have put into kind of growing your own careers at Access, but then identifying how can you support and drive action to support other people to also grow their careers at Access. And it's brilliant to see. And I think we are definitely an organisation where you can do that. I mean, certainly from my experience of other organisations that have perhaps been a bit more corporate, and you're sort of a bit more kind of confined by rules and structure. I think we've been able to actually we're very open-minded with saying, well, what about that? Could we do that? And actually making it happen. Yeah.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think it's that perspective that has actually allowed us to move forward. And then again, linking up with different teams, linking with Ewan, connecting the network with the recruitment team, and linking the internal talent marketplace. That kind of helps support people in their role, but it also connects people with their next role as well. Supporting the development, but connects people with their role as well. So it's not just you've got your job, you stay stagnant, you learn, you develop, and you see what's next. Access is a huge engine, and there's always opportunity. I think that's what keeps me moving.
Yeah, fantastic. So I know when maybe will want us to make sure that we answer some of these questions that have come through. But before we get to questions, is there anything, Tiara and Earl, you wanted to add, or you wanted to add? Otherwise we can get stuck into some questions that have come through, if that's okay with everybody.
Not much for me really. I think a quick one for me basically is, this creation of the creation of the Grace Network was a leap of faith for myself as well. At the time, I just didn't know. I wanted to make a difference. We wanted to make a difference. We just didn't know how to. But again, it was through that collective and diverse thought. We just took a leap of faith and we actually went for it. And that is my advice I give to anyone that is on this call here, or even wanting to apply for a job or not sure they want to it. Just do it. What is the worst that could happen? Prepare yourself, like Ewan has said, but go for it, because you'll always be disappointed if you didn't. You always look back, and for me, that's the worst, is looking back thinking, what happens if I did? What if? At least go for it and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, that's really true, actually, isn't it? That quite often I know there's a lot of research around this, that people can look at job specs, and different people with different backgrounds will look at different job specifications, and unless they can see that they can tick 100% off those bullet points that are on there, they will say, no, I'm not going to go for it, because I'm worried that, I've not got that little bit, and so it's not worth me going for it. And actually, in majority of cases, if you could identify with, well, you know what, I'm probably there with 70, maybe 80% of that job spec, and I've probably got some transferable skills for the other stuff, it's still worth putting in that application if you're looking at it and thinking this could be right for me.
Absolutely.
A good point, actually, just to finish, Tiara, if you've got any top tips.
I think I would definitely echo what Earl's just said, and I'd add to that, just ask the questions. That introductory interview, I had one when I first joined Access, 15 minutes. That's where I got to ask my questions. One of the big questions I asked about Access was actually, why do you like working here? Because like Claire and Ewan have said, it's got to be the right fit for you, right? Any job you apply for. And the answer I got was because of the people. So yeah, that was the response I want to hear. If you're going to be working with these people every day, it's, are you working with the right people? But yeah, definitely ask the questions. I am not a software expert. My specialism is the law, but I'm surrounded by people that are software experts like Earl, and I have to ask questions every day.
I still don't know much about software, and I've been here
Me too.
Okay, I'm going to have a look at some of these questions, and then please feel free to come in. And then one of the earlier questions we got when you were talking about the screening call, Ewan, was, why do you get rejected after a screening call if it's like a formality to give information about salary and stuff? So maybe you could just expand on that. Yeah.
So obviously with screening calls, we can't process everyone to interview, unfortunately, because if you think about it, from one job, there's only one job available, isn't there? So I'm not going to be putting 50 people forward for an interview side of things. So yes, it's an informal and initial chat, but we are still going to be marking you against the responsibilities of that role. And as a recruiter, I'm going to be asking questions. I give marketing as a example because I am a marketing recruiter. That's what my field is. So for a demand gen marketing manager, for example, I want to know if you've got demand gen marketing experience. I want to know what that looks like, etc. So I will be asking those questions, but at a high level sort of experience. And if unfortunately you turn around and said, look, I really haven't done that demand gen side of things, unfortunately for this specific role, it may be a no, but we can have a look at other opportunities. So yeah, unfortunately we can't progress everyone from a screening call into the interview and then to an offer side of things, unfortunately.
Okay. Yep. The next question was, can we just explain that difference between the recruiter and the hiring manager? How do we
Good question.
separate those?
Yeah, so but the difference between a recruiter and a hiring manager. So most companies now will have an in-house recruitment team. So for example, Access Group have a recruitment team. I'm a recruiter as part of that recruitment team. A hiring manager is probably the manager that you are going to be reporting into. So for example, if it's a marketing manager, it could be that hiring manager, it could be the head of marketing. It's just terminology that is used, but a recruiter is a recruiter. The hiring manager is normally the manager who you are going to be reporting into for that role. That's probably the easiest way to describe that, but it's lingo, it's terminology, it's jargon at the end of the day. It's, yeah, unfortunately, that's the wording for it.
Yeah, it's almost like the recruiter's like the independent body, isn't it, of the process, although obviously connected to the organization, and hiring manager or hirer is perhaps the person that you might end up working for or somewhere in that line.
Yes,
or
100%.
either sideways or upways, but somebody that would be looking to see if that you've got all the credentials for the actual role that they've had a vacancy for, and the recruiter, you're assisting them. Yeah.
And normally, like I don't know if this is a question, but you might be thinking, well, why has recruiters got the experience of rejecting people at a screening call? Is because we've probably had briefing calls with that hiring manager about specifically what they are asking for. So we normally have a sort of half an hour, 45-minute briefing call with a hiring manager with what they are looking for specifically for that role, and that can form part of our screening call side of things. So it's we've touched base with the hiring manager. We already have a top level what they're looking in for, but the hiring manager will go a lot deeper with regards to competency-based questions as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. Here's an interesting one. Is it possible to negotiate job titles? And if it is, at what stage would you do that?
So it's a good question, and it's probably I'm going to say probably it's not. So it's a bit of a tricky question to answer. So for there's normally within companies they have frameworks for job titles, etc. So and there's not much deviation that we can go on that side of things. So I'd probably say no. Whatever's advertised is probably the job title for that role, due to the career framework that a company may have, that there's job titles alignment, etc. So it can be tricky to negotiate job titles side of things. They are key. The reason it's tricky to answer this question as well is because if we think about it, certain companies use job titles differently as well. For example, HRBP is widely known within companies. That's your HR professionals. At Access Group, it's an ESBP, so Employee Success Business Partner. If I advertised a job as ESBP, no one's going to apply for that role. Not many people are going to know what it is. So when I do that, I will advertise it as HRBP, but on my screening call, I would say, look, we've advertised it as HRBP, but internally you will be known as an ESBP. So that's where there's some nuances, but negotiation of job title, I would probably try and steer away from that, because there is a framework in place normally.
Yeah. Another question, and this again sort of is coming at you, really, Ewan, at the moment, but how do you combat questions that seem out of the blue? And they've given an example here, such as, what do you think is the business's weakness?
Oh, good question. See, we don't tend to use those sort of questions, and then they're not my favorite sort of questions side of things. So it's a tricky one to actually answer that side of things. So if you've done your research into the company, if you've done research into the company, the role, and looked at news, etc., you may be able to formulate actually probably not a weakness, but is there an area where you can develop into it? And that's what I would always suggest. If there's a question about weakness, you try and change it into a development side of things, but always do your research. Hopefully that will show. But also you could always follow on that question, like at the end, just like, oh, you asked me this question about actually what the weakness, like what you felt were weaknesses within the business. What do you feel is the, like, to the hiring panel side of things? So it's a two-way question that you can fire back at them at the end of things. But I don't know if you've got any thoughts on that one, Claire.
Yeah, I think Tiara was going to come in as well then, would you? Yeah.
I was just going to say, this question's come up a lot for sort of applications for law firms or in the legal sector. And maybe a good analysis to do prior to your interview is a SWOT analysis. So strength, weaknesses, opportunities, threats. And it's looking at, okay, what are the opportunities for that business? What are the threats? And then I answer it on that basis. You won't know the ins and outs for the business without being in the business, but looking on the website, you'll see where they're stronger and what their opportunities are. For example, Access is a highly acquisitive business. So is there an opportunity to acquire a business in a new area? Or is there a new software technology that's a growth area opportunity that could be considered a weakness?
Yeah, I think that's an excellent tip. Yeah, do that SWOT analysis. And I do those regularly in work, you know, when you're trying to think about where should I be looking. It's a great tool to do. Yeah. I'm going to try and get through this quickly because I'm conscious of our time and people's time on the webinar. So someone's asking, why does the recruitment process have so many stages these days? I know of someone who went through 5 stages of interviews to be ghosted, which seems awful.
Yeah.
We wouldn't do that.
Yeah, no, unfortunately, I see quite a lot of people being ghosted. The reason why there might be a lot of stages in a recruitment process could be diary alignment, because there's actually some people that want to be involved in that process, but always ask that question. That's why we said ask that question right at the start, is how many processes are going to be involved in that. But it could be, unfortunately, that yes, it started off what's going to be a 2-stage process. However, there could be a key hiring manager, not a hiring manager, but a key decision maker that unfortunately can't make a 2nd stage interview or can't make that panel interview, and that's when it could get added onto another stage. But 5 stages to me seems a little bit excessive. As here at the Access Group, we do try and streamline that to a 2 mainly, but sometimes it does go over to a 3, but it's just down to that company. I don't know, I can't comment on a company's processes of why they've done 5. I've never worked in a company where there has been that many processes in it.
Yeah. There was a question here about, I got a screening call but didn't get invited to an interview. What could have happened? And I think we touched on that with one of the earlier questions. Here's a nice one. Could you recommend any materials, books, or a channel that we could suggest in preparing for scenario type questions?
I don't know any books or channels off the top of my head. What I'd like, if you remember that STAR methodology, that is a key thing to start thinking of your examples. But with regards to my knowledge, there are no sort of specific channels or books that are really going to sort of give you this side of thing. I may not know. It's because I don't know the answer to that. But I would, like I said, go back to the STAR methodology, be making sure that you're utilizing that. But I don't know, Claire, if you know of any books or channels that could be utilized, or Tiara now?
I'm trying to think of what
We would say our joint answer is the book called A Chimp Paradox. It focuses on your initial reaction versus your actions, and how you process information. And rather than answering on an instinctive answer, you think, slow down, take a minute, pause, and then respond.
Yeah.
Amazing.
And I think there's I think my mind goes to, I always try and think, and I tell my daughter this when she's doing her maths homework, what is it that they're trying to find out from you? So if they've given you a scenario, it's almost trying to take that moment to think, what is it that they might be trying to assess my capability to do? by presenting me with that scenario. And if you flip it a little bit like that, rather than take the scenario on face value, it's trying to kind of unearth what is it that they want me to be showcasing here about my talents that's going to help them understand whether I'm the right person for this role. So that might be a way to sort of think about the scenario. If I think of anywhere where you could do any particular ones, we can share them with Bunmi as well after.
Yeah, definitely.
I know we're sort of out of time and that some people will be having to leave, but I'll just pick up on a couple of others. There's been quite a few about salary, so I'm just going to pick up on this particular one and cover most of them, which is if you're talking about salary negotiations, is it ideal for the recruiter to ask what your current salary is? And how do you smartly answer that question without risk getting benchmarked on your current pay, which is a really good point. And when you're revealing the pay, when the recruiter's revealing the pay range, how do you give an answer that then doesn't put you outside of that pay range? So it's kind of like that. It is a delicate one, isn't it?
It's a very delicate one, and the I'd always be completely open and honest with that side of things, because actually with a role, there's probably going to be a budget for that. If your salary is sitting above that, unfortunately, there's probably not going to be much movement from that. So I would say be completely open and honest with your expectations of what you are looking for, because it could actually be that we're recruiting for another role which you may be actually be suitable for, because your salary actually falls in line with that role, and we can talk to you about that. So I would always say be completely open and honest with it. For me as a recruiter, I do ask the question of what's your current salary, what is your expectation, etc. That's how I approach that side of things. And people come back to me saying, well, my expectation is this. That's absolutely fine. Some people don't tell me what their current salary is. Again, fine, but as long as you are giving something from a salary expectation point of view, and then we can take it from there. But it's a very delicate subject to have, but it's probably better. That's why I'm saying have that conversation right at the beginning of that screening call side of things, because that's when it's going to be a much easier conversation. At least then we're not going to be wasting your time putting you through a process to find out that it's not aligned with what you were looking for. More and more companies are actually now advertising salaries, so it's a great way of just knowing from the off. But quite a few companies still are not advertising those salary side of things.
Yeah, it just varied, doesn't it? And I think your
Yep.
point there around just being clear on what your salary expectation is, I think that's probably the difference, because regardless of what salary you are paid today at your current organisation, you're probably going for a role somewhere else because multiple different factors, but probably because you're on a career trajectory and you want to move into a role that is the next step up for you to develop in your career. So your expectation doesn't have to be what you're currently being paid.
Yep.
If you're looking at that role and saying, well, actually the salary's not there, but the breadth and stretch that it looks like in that role, my expectation would be I'd want this kind of salary for that role, and just being
but I'd also say be realistic with that side of things as well. So but normally what we will have a budget for that role, so if you don't fall into that, unfortunately it's probably going to be, unfortunately we're not aligned from a salary point of view. But we can either keep in touch, like add you to a talent pool for future opportunities, or actually there may be another opportunity that we can discuss. So I would be honest within those scenarios.
I'm just having a very quick look to see if we can scan any more of the questions that have come in. How do you navigate answering when a recruiter is asking for your immigration and status and subsequent rejects your application due to, even though there's no immediate concerns? That's quite possibly I guess a legal situation. Recruiters and recruiters have deductive reasoning tests when the tests have no relation to the job role and skills. I could probably pick that up, that there is quite often those, you talked about them, situational judgment tests or psychometric tests that organisations will use to try and understand those aspects. And they're usually, well, in my experience, they're never used in isolation. They're part of a complementary set of, coupled with the interview, because you would never really use a psychometric test generally that might pull out someone's strengths or weaknesses then as the only method of deciding whether that candidate is in or out. The purpose of those tests is to add and hopefully inform some of the thinking behind the interview. So it's rare that I would see that.
And my experience with psychometrics test as well, it actually gives interviewers or hiring managers some key questions that they can ask you about. So they normally actually provide some questions that you could ask in interview. We used psychometric testing luxury retail, but only for store managers and above. So because obviously it's a big people leadership side of things, so it will draw in experience from a people management side of things, not sometimes from a psychometric test of my experience as well.
And I think from both what Claire and Ewan have said, that it's been used for a specific scenario and it is relevant. In my experience, where it's not been relevant, it's made me look at the application process for that particular organisation in a way where I think actually that might not be the best fit for me. My application process for Access, the questions, the tests were all very appropriate, and I didn't have an issue in that sense. But in organisations where it doesn't match, I've very much thought, is that the right organisation for me, rather than am I right for their role?
Yeah, a really good point. Has Access Group tracked how onboarding and L&D have reduced learning curves for new hires? I'm not sure any of us would probably be the sort of in the know there to be able to answer that.
I can answer that.
Yeah. Oh, go on.
Because so obviously we have onboarding and L&D to help the engineers get up to speed with the application so they can service our customers better. So yes, we do track how new hires onboarding and learning development goes. They go through different stages. They have generic Access learning and development onboarding, so what they have to know to actually work at Access, how to be safe at Access, what to know about Access, and then they have within my application suite, quite a big plethora of training that they have to go through in regards to how to service the application, how to answer the phone, how to understand tone, etiquette, phone training, all that sort of stuff. And then it's kind of measured on a time to success basis. So, how quick can we get that person, or how are we benchmarking that person to successfully managing the customers and closing cases, for example. And then we're constantly reviewing that so that we can make sure that we holistically get all the training right, done and properly, and then get them servicing our customers as quick as possible, essentially. So yes, I do quite a bit of that, which is quite fun.
Brilliant, thank you, Earl. That's excellent. Thank you for answering that question. And then the last one that we've got here, if we're okay, Bunmi, for time, is from Richard, who met Earl at the careers fair that we went to in September, didn't we? We were all there. Yeah, three of us were there. And he's talking about the experience that he had of a role that he did come to a role with us, but was not selected, and is questioning really because the particular feedback was around the selected candidate has a strong software background, and is sort of perhaps concerned if that would be the same answer again in the future. Now, obviously, without knowing the ins and outs of what specifically that role required, I would still say, Richard, that shouldn't put you off from getting in touch with that recruiter again about other roles. I think always have that conversation, and if the software experience is let's say an essential criteria for a given role, then yes, that may be the case. But at least the recruiter, you two can have that conversation and get underneath it. Is that the essential criteria for that role? Or actually, is that something that can be learnt on the job for that particular role and isn't as necessary? So I think don't let that put you off.
I just quickly say as well that there are a plethora of roles out there, and like Ewan said, sometimes when you go for a role, you might not be suited for that role, but there are a lot of other roles that may have transferable skills that you could also go for. It's all about, Tiara said it earlier, it's all about the people. If you are a right fit for Access and that Access is a right fit for you, there's a good chance that it may well be successful. So just be that right person. And again, Access is a big engine. There's always an opportunity somewhere. So don't stop.
Now, and I know now we're bang out of questions and we're bang out of time, because I know Rick said to me we would definitely not be able to go past 7:10. So thank you so much. It's been really lovely to connect with so many people on here, and I hope you've taken a lot away from the expertise of you and Tiara and Earl that they've shared with you today. And I'll hand back to Bunmi to close this off.
All right. Thank you, Claire. Thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Tiara. Thank you, Earl. Thank you, Iwan. I think this is the point where we all say thank you, everyone, but it's not, we can't all unmute ourselves. So I'm just going to say it on behalf of everyone. Yes, some people are dropping it in the chat. Thank you. Look at that. We have people saying this was an amazing session. Thank you so much. I personally learned a lot. I'm sure other people learned a lot as well. Thank you so much, guys. All right, enjoy the rest of your day and stay connected with BYP, stay connected with Access Group. Thank you so much. It was a great session. Bye, everyone.
Thank you again.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
Bye.